With the signing of the Status of Forces Agreement in Iraq, morphing now into what the Iraqis are calling the Withdrawal Agreement, and some people are calling the Long-Term Agreement. Well, just what really is that agreement? Well, to help us figure it out, we're now joined by Leila Fadel. She's the McClatchy Bureau Chief in Baghdad. She's now in the Washington offices of McClatchy, where we are now. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So there seems to be some confusion about just exactly what is this agreement. The Iraqis are saying, Maliki is saying, that this is a hard agreement, that the Americans have to be out. Over here we're hearing Gates is suggesting, well, there's still wiggle room to have residual forces left after the agreement. Give us what you know as the facts.
Okay. Well, we got an Arabic version of the agreement, which we translated into English. And in that agreement, the Iraqis tried to create as hard an agreement, I think, as they could, which has no option to extend, which has no option to change anything unless both parties agree. Meaning there is an opening for some type of amendment to the what is being called now the Withdrawal Agreement, if both the Iraqi government and the American government agree to make a change. So when you read that agreement, there is a clause inside the security agreement that says, by December 31st, 2011, all U.S. forces must be off of all Iraqi land.
So the Iraqi understanding, certainly amongst popular opinion, means soldiers, contractors, bases. It means the entire society of American occupation leaves.
That's right. All the installations, meaning every single base, all these, the plethora of trailers and the DFAC and all the people that cook at the cafeteria, all those things.
And some of these bases are enormous. They're like little cities.
Exactly. They're the one near the airport, it's a city. It's a city with different bases on there. All of that is supposed to be handed over to the Iraqi government by December 31st, 2011. And the definition of U.S. forces includes all of that, in the sense of the contractors and everybody who is supporting their existence or their presence in Iraq. And the way that Maliki has sold the agreement to the population and has talked about it is as the end of the deemed American occupation. He has won a date. When that agreement was first being discussed, the American administration talked about time horizons and the idea of condition-based withdrawal and all that stuff. None of that is in the agreement, or at least the Arabic version of the agreement that we've read, and it's supposed to be a direct translation.
So this is being interpreted in two ways here. It's being interpreted as a kind of defeat for what Bush had hoped for, a setback even for what Obama had planned in terms of having some residual forces. But it's also being interpreted as not really that at all, that in fact this is something to appease Iraqi public opinion, but there's so much wiggle room possible within this agreement that in fact there will be room for residual forces. Well, from an Iraqi point of view, and certainly from Iraqi public opinion, what do people believe this is?
Well, Iraqi public opinion, which is completely separate from the government, is that they believe that a lot of them haven't read the 31 clauses of this agreement, but they have an opinion. They believe that their government is hiding something from them, and that no matter what they say, if they say all U.S. forces will leave by 2011, there will be bases, there will be American forces, and there are definitely at least creative writing and possibly secret clauses in the agreement. This is what people will tell you when you ask them about it and why they're against it, because they don't believe that it will be honored the way it's being described.
Sadr and the Sadrists had said if this was signed, they would start to fight the occupation again. At one point, they said that. Now, where is that now?
Well, I think we have to make it clear that they never said they would stop. I mean, when Muqtada Sadr talked about disbanding his militia, he did disband a lot of it and turned it into a civic organization, but he reserved the right to fight an occupation, and he had an elite fighting force. So in a sense, he really was just paring down his millions of militants into a smaller organization that has one goal: fight the occupation. So once the agreement came out, they came out against it and called for the splinter groups of his militia, because basically when he changed the purpose of his militia, which was to fight, back to a civic organization and protect the people in other ways by helping them with other things, people left. They wanted to continue to fight, and they got support in other places, and they left. And he called for those people to come back and fight with him, as long as they only fought the foreign occupation and not kill Iraqis.
So have they in fact re-engaged with arms against the U.S. occupation?
No, I mean, I think time will tell. I mean, we haven't seen anything that indicates that there's been a huge surge of militant activity against the U.S. occupation or U.S. military in Iraq. I mean, we haven't seen evidence of that yet. But maybe that will start in January, or maybe this is all talk. Muqtada al-Sadr has been in Iran for almost the entire time that I've been bureau chief, 2 years. He's never made a public appearance in Iraq in the 2 years that I've been running the bureau. He used to do press conferences in front of his house. I went to his house and went to a press conference in front of his house one day. I mean, he doesn't do that anymore.
So what is the level of fighting now in terms of guns pointed at American troops? What is the level of violence? What is the level of fight now?
It's very low compared to what it was. I mean, I can't off the top of my head give you numbers really, but the way that Americans were dying last year, in the beginning of 2007 and all of 2006, that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, you lose, sometimes you do lose a lot of soldiers. I mean, 5 soldiers in a week, maybe a few months ago, back in March, was the last time I really saw that happen, when Basra happened and when Sadr City blew up. But you're not seeing a huge number of U.S. soldiers dying. And part of that may be also because they have to start withdrawing from the cities. And the other part of that is that the violence has dropped towards American forces because the militants have laid down their weapons and tried to lay low for all this time. And so we may see a change. We just have to watch for it, but you're not going to see it overnight like that. I mean, this just happened.
Well, there's been a lot of debate about why things have calmed down. In the next segment of our interview, let's kind of dig into just what was the surge and how much was about the surge and how much is the lessening of violence about other factors. Please join us for the next segment of our interview with Leila Fadel. Endless wars, abuse of powers, declining living standards, and the climate change crisis. The stakes couldn't be greater in the U.S., and with your help, we're moving our news operation to Washington, D.C., where we'll focus on money and corruption. For example, big oil and arms companies shape American economic and foreign policy with far-reaching effects on the lives of ordinary people. With allies in government, trade unions, the media, and in think tanks, they're a hidden hand that controls the commanding heights of American politics. Taking on the industrial military complex is what real change requires. Even former presidents and high administration officials have said so. But corporate television news treats such positions as marginal. Uncompromising journalism requires questioning assumption, interrogating structures of wealth and power. Corporate TV news just won't do it. Only a news organization that's truly independent can tackle such issues with courage and tenacity. And we'll take on corporate TV news live. You'll watch TV news with our panel of writers, journalists, scientists, and historians. You'll be able to join in by phone, webcam, chat. Together we'll discuss and debate what's the real story and take on the myth and the propaganda. But this is only possible if you support us now. We need to prove that a viewer-funded model works. So if you want the real news, we need you now. Please click on the donate button and give generously. Now's the time to decide if you want the real news to thrive.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.